causes several diseases like, for example, cataract, lung cancer, skin cancer, etc. This translates to around 7 million deaths annually around the world. It also causes various economic impacts. Like, for example, back in 2021, around $9.8 trillion was spent on health costs, which was around 11.3% of the GDP at the time. There are also several ecological impacts of air pollution. I'll be talking about three of them. Number one is ocean acidification. Number two is depletion of the ozone layer. And three is global warming. Ocean acidification. Ocean acidification basically happens when CO2 gets into the oceans. When it enters the oceans, it combines with the water, which forms carbonic acid. This affects marine life. Now I'm going to talk about depletion of the ozone layer. Let's understand some history. Back in the 1990s, fridges, air conditioners, and a couple more household devices used to release CFCs, which stands for chlorofluorocarbons. They used to go up into the ozone layer, which is a layer of ozone molecules. When they used to go up into the ozone layer, the chlorofluorocarbons used to destroy the ozone molecules. When they destroy the ozone molecules, there would be an ozone hole. Knowing this, several countries signed the Montreal Protocol, which renewed multiple household devices, and now all your fridges, air conditioners, and other household devices don't produce CFCs. Now I'm going to talk about global warming. Global warming basically happens when the sunlight goes into the Earth's atmosphere. When it goes into the Earth's atmosphere, it hits the surface and then it gets reflected. When it gets reflected, if there are no greenhouse gases in the air, it will go up into space. But if there are greenhouse gases, it will get reflected back to Earth. And when it gets reflected back to Earth, it increases the heat. And this is the global warming. And this process is called the greenhouse effect. It causes an impact like floods and rising sea levels when the heat burns up glaciers and icebergs. Now let's move on to pollutants. First of all, what is a pollutant? A pollutant is basically a harmful gas that is present in our air that negatively affects our health and the environment around us. There are two types of pollutants, primary and secondary. Primary pollutants include CO2, methane, nitrous oxides, and etc. Now, let's talk about secondary pollutants. Secondary pollutants are basically when multiple primary pollutants combine. Let's understand that with an example. Now, a factory will release sulfur dioxide, which is a primary pollutant that comes from a source. Now, when the sulfur dioxide combines with water vapor, it forms sulfuric acid within the clouds. Now, that results in acid rain. This is an example of a secondary pollutant. Now, let's move on to sources. There are many sources. There are two types, natural and unnatural. The natural ones include dust storms, wildfires, and volcanic eruptions. Now, in unnatural, there are two classifications, indoor and outdoor. In indoor, there are your air conditioners, old ones, and fridges, again old ones, and stoves and others. While outside ones are like your factories, power plants, and vehicles, which are mainly the more obvious ones. Now I'm going to talk about solutions to the problem. Now I'm going to talk about government initiatives, and two, I'm going to talk about what citizens can do. I'm going to talk about two government initiatives. Number one, it can promote EVs. There are three ways it can do it. Number one, it can increase the price for petrol or diesel vehicles. Two, it can reduce the price for EVs. Three, it can increase the number of electrical vehicle charging points. Now, it can also move to renewable energies. Because if you use fossil fuels, the fossil fuels will release carbon and other pollutants. That is why if we use renewable energies, those renewable energies, like for example hydroelectric dams, windmills and solar panels, those will not release carbon and other pollutants. Now let's move on to what citizens can do. Number one, they can plant trees or plants in our balconies. Two, we can of course use to public transport, because multiple people will be in one vehicle, and walking and cycling. And the last is an unexpected one. It is turning off the lights and electronic devices. How does that relate to air pollution? Because lights, electronic devices and ACs and etc. all are powered by power plants. Now I've done a case study on Singapore. But before we get to what Singapore has done, let's do a comparison with Hong Kong. But first, why have I compared Singapore with Hong Kong? The reason why I compared Singapore with Hong Kong is that the population of Singapore is very similar to the population of Hong Kong. But if you check the population density, which is basically the amount of people in a specific amount of area, Singapore's population density is actually higher than Hong Kong's. Now, on your first assumption, you would think that if a population density is higher, then you would use more vehicles and use more resources, which translates to a higher AQI. But in this case, the assumption is wrong. The reasons behind this are because, number one, because of the Haze Pollution Act, which was signed because Indonesia's wildfires used to release haze, and the haze from Indonesia used to affect Singapore's air quality. So that is why in 1997 Singapore made Indonesia sign the Haze Pollution Act, which basically states that any factory or any company that releases haze into Singapore will be heavily fined. Number two, the price for vehicles is very high. It is because of the high tax. To conclude, India has one of the worst air quality in the world. In fact, Delhi has the worst air quality in the entire world. But India can easily reduce it using small actions. They say small actions lead to big effect. That means that small actions, like for example turning off the lights, planting plants, or cycling for short distances, can lead to big effects.